The Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia. For over 30 years, they have been the go-to destination for all your music merch needs. From working with today's hottest bands to create truly one-of-a-kind pieces, as well as boasting a truly massive online store, Rockabilia is your one-stop shop when it comes to band merch. Use our code BRUTALLY at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. Huge thanks to Rockabilia for their continued support, and now, on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guests are Harrison and Scott of Capstan. Their latest album, The Mosaic, is out now via Fearless Records. It's been out for a few weeks now, so hopefully you've had the time to really soak it in. We'll kind of talk a lot about that record, though, in our conversation. So what I would like to discuss, what I'd like to talk about, honestly, is just the overwhelmingly positive reaction to the Jordan Buckley episode that came out last week. It numbers-wise did very well as just the overall feedback I got. A lot of comments, a lot of DMs, basically stating, someone commented on the YouTube version how happy they were to hear Jordan sounding happy, and how it made them happy. And it's one of those things to me where when I did the conversation with Jordan, I knew it was good. I knew the things we touched on and the things we discussed were very important, and hopefully someone would hear them and be able to take something out of it and apply it to their own lives for the betterment of themselves. And it was a thing, though, that I was a little worried because, the die-hard nature of the Every Time I Die fan base, and now rightfully so, the Better Lovers fan base, is pretty rabid. And it's one where, I think a lot of times we think about people and we kind of have these people sort of tucked into a little area. And I think for me, especially when I think of, Every Time I Die and my experiences and memories of going to see those guys and listening to those guys, it's sort of a party. And it's upbeat and it's fun and it's all those things. And I was hoping that people weren't necessarily expecting that. I do think, in light of all the things we discussed, I think Jordan and I found a way to have fun and crack jokes throughout. But by and large, it was more of a serious conversation. And I love kind of getting to showcase a different side of people, maybe than people are used to seeing in press media things. So I just wanted to take a moment to really thank everyone for checking out the episode and sending me a lot of positivity surrounding the episode. And also thanks to Jordan once again for actually sharing it. There was actually a lot of people that shared it. And that always is great to see. Still getting used to it. And, it kind of also made me think this past week, I was a guest on Pure Pleasure Podcast again. That'll be out probably, if I had to guess, probably within a month or so. But, we were kind of discussing throughout positivity versus negativity. And I feel like this is a common theme I'm kind of seeing, in my day-to-day life. I was listening to a podcast even today, the Burt Kreischer episode with Ari Shafir, and they were talking about how, back in the day, being negative used to be, kind of frowned upon. Like it people were like, oh, why are you always so negative? Or, things like that. And basically now they're saying, like, with something like Shannon Sharp's podcast where, people are going on and just putting people on blast and being negative, and it's getting a ton of attention. It's getting a ton of clicks, views, all this other stuff. And, negativity has always been kind of a thing that I think people are driven to because, I mean, it's almost kind of like the car crash scenario where it's like everyone slows down to look at it. And I think the same thing can be said about something negative when you see it and it's on a wide scale, platform of sorts, that it becomes this thing where everyone wants to have a comment about it, and then just perpetuate the negativity. And I feel like it takes actually, it doesn't take as much effort at all. I feel like it's actually a lot easier just to be positive. And on top of that, I feel like when you are more positive in your approach to things, that I feel like it's more sincere. I think you get a lot more out of it, even if it takes a while for that to come to fruition, whatever the positivity that you're putting out there, whatever it's going to yield back to you. Sometimes it may take a little while, but I think it's ultimately exponentially worth more than whatever the negativity gives you as far as attention, likes, whatever. And I think ultimately the other big thing too in all of that is, I guess it all just boils down to being authentically you, in whatever capacity that looks like. I think for me, I try to be very positive in my outlook. And, I think just like everybody else, I stumble. Sometimes I'm angry. I say things and whatever, and I lash out. And it's kind of far and few between. But it's a thing where, like, in this last month or so of, like, putting out the episodes I've been doing and I've been very excited for, starting with the Andrew from Idola, Dance Gavin, the Jordan Buckley, even this one with Harrison and Scott. There's just a lot of focus on being authentically you, and reaping the rewards of that. And I think Capstan, honestly, as a collection of people, did that. I mean, the Mosaic is one of those records. When I first heard it, when I thought about what the album title meant, it perfectly encapsulated what I think becoming an adult is and growing older. Like, it's a collection of all your memories, all your experiences, all the things that make you you and the journey you've been on to become you. And it creates this picture as you kind of step further away. And to me, I feel like that's, as a musician, what you're always doing. You're always picking up little pieces, little memories, little things that just kind of transpire and permeate into your art. And so I think Capstan, not really having been a super long fan of the band, it's only been a few years since I kind of got into the band, but it's a thing where this record is really ambitious, and I'm very excited to see what it does for the band. And I honestly think this might be one, like I was saying earlier, about kind of, the positivity. Sometimes it may take a little while for whatever the joy, the good things in life to kind of come back to you when you keep putting good out there. But I feel like this is an example where I think maybe if the people that are fans of Capstan don't quite get this record currently, a few weeks in, that this will be one where when you kind of give it more time, maybe you go through something, it'll be the record you kind of lean on to get you through those times, and you'll really personify with this record as you get older, or go through more things in your own life. And to me, that's the beauty of music, and that's the beauty of good music, is when it's able to kind of grow with you. All of that said, let's get into my conversation with Harrison and Scott, and I'll talk to you all on the other side of it.
Yeah, cool.
So it's kind of funny. I was thinking the other day, like, maybe this is my old age starting to kick in, but I was like, as I was looking at the promo photo when listening to the album advance that I got, I was like, I know Capstan, and I was like, I don't think I've ever seen you play. And then it dawned on me that you guys were the opening band on the Being as an Ocean tour that I saw at in Detroit at St. Andrews or whatever, which was a really weird time because I think that was kind of right when touring started coming back. I don't want to say post-pandemic, but kind of at the tail end of it. So it was a very interesting memory of that show being one of the first shows where I was like, I guess we're back now. I don't know. And I wondered, how was it for you guys? Because like obviously everyone's kind of talked about it, when it was happening. But I mean, like I said, I think you were really one of the first bigger tours that kind of did a full tour right out the gates when everything kind of opened back up. So I mean, is it kind of interesting to see how touring has kind of maybe gone back to normal since you were one of the first to hit it right out the gates?
Yeah, yeah. We actually like that being as an ocean tour was in January 2022, and
Okay.
we had done like right before that in like what was it? I think in November we did a tour with Tiny Moving Parts, and that was it was like obviously like you were saying like coming right back to it and it's like oh the world is different, everyone's checking your vaccination card and it's like just a totally different experience, social distancing and masks. So yeah, it was very different. And as everything is tapered off, it's just totally back to normal. People going ham, jumping all over each other. But yeah, during that period there, particularly in our scene, because I feel like like country shows were still going super hard in 2020. But in our vein of music, it was very slow to come back. Yeah.
I thought it was kind of interesting because around that time, and it's just kind of interesting because like I just got back from Atlanta this like 2 days ago as of when we're recording on a super last minute trip, but that's kind of like my go and recharge, touch grass kind of place. Like I go there and I just come back feeling recharged. But we even had gone there, and it was just kind of interesting thinking about in the probably 6 or 7 years that I've been going to Atlanta pretty consistently, like how things I've seen change, how different times of the year or conditions, like we went during COVID a few different times and following all the different procedures and stuff and literally seeing some people where I'm like, I haven't seen your face ever. Like
Yeah.
you only exist in this one capacity. And so it just, like I said, it's been kind of interesting thinking about, how everything seems to be normal now. When you get on a flight, it's not all of the same precautions and state mandates that you have to get familiar with before you even go. And oddly, because someone was kind of bringing this up about getting to talk to people from all over the world and seeing so many different places through doing this podcast and just traveling in general, but it was kind of the first instance, and this is maybe a weird analogy that maybe you can agree or disagree with me on, but it's kind of the only example I can think of where the states maybe felt like going to different countries. Like when you go abroad, where you're like, I'm an hour away. What are the rules here? I don't know. I got to figure this out. Is my money any good? I don't know. Like it's kind of one of the only instances I could think of where I was like, for once, if you went an hour or so, like everything could be totally different. And it was the only example I could think of in quote unquote recent times where that may have been a thing. So I wondered how you guys even you're probably used to it just touring, like everything's Groundhog Day to a degree to you guys.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, we're stationed in Florida, and Florida was crazy during this time. Like, not like I remember like our downtown bars were open when they shouldn't have been, and like, so like when we were on the road, it's like we go to places and it's like, oh, we totally forgot. Like, yeah, this place is very intense. Like, but you're totally right. That's definitely how it felt. I feel like.
Yeah, it was. I mean, now it's like we've done it so much that we kind of have like any state we're in, we kind of know what's up with it. Particularly like when they stop selling beer and stuff like that. That kind of stuff. But yeah, specifically that time, like the difference between like New York City and Texas is this very big difference, So yeah, an interesting time to tour, that's for sure.
It was an interesting time to be a fan of things too, because I feel like I know my wife and I got a lot of shit for traveling and going to do stuff, even though we got vaccinated and all that stuff. But it was a thing where it was really hard to not be like, if this is going to be our new normal, I just want to go back to normal, whatever that looks like in whatever capacity. The flip side of that, like I said, when you start traveling, it's like going to Vegas. Vegas had different rules depending on what building you were even in, where it's like, I'm going to get food. Okay, you got to wear your mask. All right. Till you're sat at a table. Okay. Until you get a glass of water. Okay. Until you have food. Fuck, none of this makes any sense. And you all are in the same quote unquote zone. Like, make it make sense. So it just was kind of an interesting thing to like I said, think about in my traveling, and kind of linking you guys in the memory of that tour, just being like, wow, like it's not been that long, but it feels like a whole lifetime has passed. And I guess that's kind of as good of a segue as any, as the new record. It's interesting you call it Mosaic, because I feel like we sort of exist now in this playlist mentality, like where a lot of people aren't interested in a band's record anymore, but just a singular song that fits a vibe that I can throw on a playlist, and that's the culture we live in now. But I also feel like when bands kind of do something like how I feel Mosaic is, where it gives you the freedom to not have to create one song, or I got to cater to this demographic, but it's like, no, we're just fucking vibing with this idea, this song, this whatever. And it's really a truer representation, I think, of who you all are. Was it kind of a struggle to figure out where this record was going to go, since it kind of doesn't go in any one direction necessarily sonically?
That isn't a. That's a great. That is a good observation.
Thank you.
Yeah, obviously it's very eclectic and kind of all over the place, and we didn't, and it's distinctly different than things we've done in the past. Particularly like Separate, we kind of knew what we wanted to make. Every if you've heard it, it kind of is all those songs are very similar in style and structure. And this time around, we're like, you know what? Fuck that. We're gonna do whatever we want, and as long as we like the music and think it's cool, we're gonna do that. And it ended up accidentally kind of becoming like a concept record, because that's just how it goes, So like, when we kind of just once we kind of figured that out, we just leaned into it, and like then at the end of it, we were recording a bluegrass track. So it's just like, yeah, it's kind of just let's do whatever we want and have fun, and if it comes out cool, that's great.
How did you find the process of doing that? Because I feel like that would either be very freeing, or it could also be very. I could see it being very frustrating, because you're like, if there's not necessarily a focus, like it's got to fit within this, that you like, how do you rein yourself in? Like, how do you put limits necessarily to where it's not like you're not going insanely far out of what it could be?
Yeah, that's a great question, and really both of those things happened. So yeah, it was incredibly freeing, because not having to work yourself into a box and being like, well, I want to make a pop track and I want to make a death metal track. Like we just did both of those and said fuck it. But then on the other side, you get into like, because we also did engineer and produce the record ourselves. You get into infinite revision syndrome, and then you're like, what, this one element is not quite perfect, or like, oh, the way that these trap hats sound, like I want a slightly different thing, and then you're just in this constant revision cycle, and then that just adds time and all this. So it's really trying to find the middle ground between those two things to make something, at least finish something, right?
I often wonder, because as someone who's into a wide array of things, but typically I would say I get pigeonholed into a very specific thing just based on looks, and especially with the show, it's like, okay, the name, but the name is more of a pun than anything. But I wonder, when writing this album, like the first thing that stuck out to me was that it's in, I don't know if you want to call them pieces, but there's titles or chapters. There's 1, 2, and 3. And it kind of made me wonder, was there ever an intention to release these in like EPs, and then when the third one's kind of ready to drop it as a full record, kind of maybe repurposed as far as track listing goes, so it fits what you kind of saw everything to be? But was that ever an idea?
We had kicked something like that around. Unfortunately, we're like, I wouldn't say unfortunately. It's more of like, we have contractual obligations of how we release stuff. Okay. So we couldn't have done like 2 EPs prior, or it kind of had to follow some sort of single structure to get there. How we did talk about doing the final track as the last single, which would have been true psycho mode. But yeah, it ended up just kind of like we pick the singles that we have because we're like, okay, well, we're gonna let everyone hear some different part. Oh, that was your dog. I was like, wait, was that right? I don't.
That's mine. Yeah, my dog's barking right now.
Okay, I have a dog too, and I'm like, wait, what's up? Yeah.
I also think the prog nerd in us was like, 18-song record sounds cool. Let's just do it.
And then like, you know, repeating parts and pulling themes from other tracks into the last one. That was like something we've always wanted to do, and it just kind of fit the vibe of what we were going for on this record anyway. So we were like, let's do it.
What would kind of I kind of gravitated toward initially was just kind of knowing, you know, I don't know if anyone actually reads your guys' like press bios, like when you get the advances or whatever, but I always think there's like kind of nuggets in there to kind of maybe expound upon ideas, maybe like because typically we don't get the thing like the full packaging. I don't get the lyrics and stuff like that. So it's like that sometimes will help me inform maybe something that I'm hearing like for the first time that I'm picking up on. To where I'm then going, okay, maybe this is sort of the theme of the record because I've kind of noticed this thing or whatever. So a lot of times I feel like when I'm talking to someone about a record, I feel like I'm kind of grasping at straws of like, well, this is what I hear. And then usually the other person might be like, you're fucking way off. It's not even remotely close to what it is. But it's a thing where when I read that it was, you know, basically a concept record, I always find it interesting to think of how do you present in today's age, like I was saying, like where everything's about a single or a playlist or whatever, how do you choose what is going to be the first thing that someone hears off of a record, knowing that they may not listen to the full record?
I think for this one, I mean, it's been a lot easier in the past, and I don't know if you're at the beginning of the rollout, we picked our first singles were Bête Noire and Heart to Heart, and those two songs are they're very, very different. And we released one on a Friday and then one on the following Tuesday, and it was more of like, here's two singles, and we didn't announce a record at that point or anything, but it's like, here's two singles, and they're pretty wide. Like, let's see what's up, you know. And then it's more of just like, what songs do we think are the strongest? Like, what do we think, you know, what's super catchy or interesting, or that's more important for the beginning rollout. But as it goes, you kind of just are like, well, this is like our next single is what you want. I guess by the time this airs, that will have already been out, but that's like like an electronic pop track. So it's like, it's more of just like, how do you show an audience the scope of what you're trying to do, but also show, like, have these songs individually, like, oh, this song's sick on its own. So it's kind of walking the line between like totally showing this experimental thing and then also walking the line of, oh, these are just catchy singles. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think the other thing that stood out to me when seeing that the first two singles, whenever you can see like the track listing on like iTunes or Spotify or whatever, it always intrigues me, like, where are these songs from on the record? Because like what's always interesting to me in like these two songs, you know, that are singles, they're on the back half of the record. They're like basically ending the record, which to me, I would always be like, well, if I really like these songs and these are the songs that you're back like filling, how great is the front part you're not showing me? Because that's typically the trick everyone does now is like, all right, first four songs that you know, the rollout, those are going to be the first four singles roughly on the album in order. And then the rest of it, you're just kind of like, I don't know what I'm getting, this other part that you're not sharing at this point. But to me, that's always, as an active listener and someone that just loves music, I always pay attention to little things like that, going like, all right, like what are you holding back if you're only doing singles from the back part of the record?
Yeah, that was more of like a strategy of like, well, let's try to like, because it is so long, you know, it's not that like there's no, we don't want to say that there's like filler on the record, because like that's not how we feel. But it's more of, you know, if you want to keep, like, if people love those songs, they're at the back of the record, and like you'll have there's new stuff all over the record, and then there's like little checkpoints of things if you listen to it straight through, you know. So that's kind of the idea there.
was interesting because an open letter. Let me pull up the record real quick. I think it was called Compendium. Yeah, Compendium. It was kind of weird because I almost felt like those were the best way I could describe it when listening to it was they're almost like the save points when you're playing a video game. Like just that like kind of transition where you're like, all right, I'm at a different spot now. I'm gonna save and make sure that if I fucking die in 2 seconds upon this new thing, that like at least I can start back here. But it was just kind of interesting to sort of seem like you guys really put an effort into paying attention to the track listing, as well as just kind of offering a bit of reprieve. Almost seemingly like, I know an open letter is 4 or 5 more tracks before two revise, but it's almost like it feels like it's lending yourself into chapter 2, into this last phase of the record when you have these like little breakups. Was that sort of the intention for those, or were these kind of always companion pieces to like what was next to them?
Yeah, they're kind of like, it kind of splits the record in 5 sections. There's the intro, and then it gets to open letter, and then the record until revise, and then revise to compendium, and then compendium to the end. It's like, yeah. I mean, we went into this wanting to do interludes. Like we're like, let's do interludes. Like let's have a lot of fun. We have all the time in the world. Let's do it. Compendium, Joe absolutely crushed that. Like he arranged that whole thing. It's super sick, and like there's all those things are just all callbacks to different songs. Yeah, all the melodies in that whole piece are all just callbacks to different songs. And yeah, it's kind of a cool way of looking at it, as like a save point. Like take a break, listen to the strings, and then it's like the full on assault with Bet and Malik.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, because we're older dudes, and I feel like we still, even though I feel like a lot of the world doesn't, but like we still really appreciate like the experience of listening to a record from beginning to end. And so like we wanted to make it kind of like when we were younger, how we always wanted a record to go.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like from my perspective, being older as well than I think most of the demographic of the show, that I feel the same way. This feels like this may be like such a weird comparison because I don't think sonically necessarily it fits the vibe, but it just kind of felt like when Finch put out Say Hello to Sunshine. Like this feels like your Say Hello to Sunshine, in the fact that it's still got the core of what makes your band you, but it's taking a pretty giant leap forward. And I feel like at times some people might be like, I don't know if I fuck with this yet. And it might take them years and years to kind of fully understand what you are trying to do now. But then this sets up everything for you guys to kind of branch off and kind of go in more directions maybe that you maybe wanted to, or just were a little bit afraid to on this one, which is saying something. Because like I said, I think this is a pretty adventurous, full on, like goes in a lot of different directions. But to me, hearing something like this, it just makes me always go, all right, this record might be a year old now that I'm hearing it. Like you guys might have been sitting on this for a year. So what are you writing now that's got you excited, that you're like, hey, let's take this idea because this worked really well and like keep expanding upon it. And I feel like that's sort of the fun thing of being a fan of different genres of music and stuff like that, is seeing this going, this reminds me of this band, this record, and what it did for them, and how the bands that I gravitate toward more are the ones that take risks and sometimes go way left when you're not expecting them to. But it's ultimately, if the band fans are willing to grow with you, what ultimately makes like something like this really exciting when you look back on it 10 years later, where you're like, this was such a fucking game changer for us.
Damn. Well, yeah. That's hopefully how it goes. But it's also just setting us up to be like, we can write and record whatever we want and do it in exactly the way we want. So it's like, it is adventurous, but it was just fun as hell to make. Yeah. So yeah.
Are you? Because I know you guys are touring. I don't remember the tour you're doing though. I was gonna say, with a record like this, how do you? I mean, I would assume it's gonna be singles, but are you looking to maybe start adding more stuff off of this once the record's out to the set list and kind of really showcasing a lot of this material in the live setting?
Yeah, it'll be a mix. We won't do a full like a headliner on this stuff until probably next year. So what do we? We're playing.
We're playing Arrows, Bet,
Arrows, Bet, and Heart to Heart, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and we toyed around with playing others, but
yeah, it's so hard because you have to, like, when you're building the set, you have to, like, you got to keep the heaters that everyone already knows and loves, but you have to introduce the new ones, and so it's a complex dance of trying to figure out, like, what to keep, what to get rid of, and it can be tricky.
I say you just don't tell anyone, and then play most of this record. Play like
Yeah,
one or
right.
two the other big songs, and then just be like, well, we want you to like this record, so we're just gonna do what we want.
Yeah, hey, that's it goes along with the mantra anyway. Let's fucking do it.
What was the label's reaction to this album? Like, did you have to turn stuff in along the way, or did you send it in completed?
So we had to, I mean, like, when we told them, we're like, hey, we want to do 18 songs, like, our fearless rep was like, yeah, of course you do. That's like the most Capstan thing you guys have ever said. But honestly, they were pretty cool about the whole thing. Like, we thought we were going to get some pushback, but they were like, yeah, it's fine, do what you want. They trusted our process, and it ended up, because not only did we do 18 songs, but we also, like, recorded and produced the record ourselves. So I'm sure it was like a hard pitch at first, but, like, they were totally cool about everything. They gave us the freedom we needed. And yeah, so they were pretty cool about everything.
Was there any trepidation on your guys' part to do this entirely within in-house?
Yeah, I mean, it more came down to, like, we've recorded with a lot of really successful engineers. And Harry is actually a great engineer. He works at a studio here in Orlando. He does his own thing. He's very good.
Thank you.
Good job. And, yeah, it was kind of more of the, like, we've seen what engineers do. We've, and not to, like, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's because of their shortcomings or that there were shortcomings, but more of we know how to do this too, and, like, we can allocate resources better and make a better product by taking on some of the legwork ourselves.
Yeah.
How did you this so I always kind of find working relationships really interesting, just because I think there's so many ways that you end up growing or can learn about yourself and other people that you've known for a long time. How was it in the working capacity, working with each other and not maybe having that one person who could kind of be, the go-between that's, like, isn't, I don't want to say not vested, but when you are all together, you all know each other. I mean, just like my best friends, I know if I want to fuck with them, I know the buttons to push, and I know the things I can say in the heat of the moment to, like, get them. I'm not saying that's the best way to work with people or do stuff, but, like, I do know that, I'm sure in heated situations where maybe you're loving an idea or a vocal melody or something, and the other people are like, I don't know. And you're like, you know what? Well, fuck you. Like, was there any of that? Was there any of that kind of stuff where it was at times challenging to work with one another?
So we did employ a new thing on this record.
Okay.
Which we called the "Everyone Got One Hill to Die On."
Okay.
And it's like, if someone felt strongly about something, it's like, this is the hill I'm going to die on, this one. And it's like, okay, you want to use your one hill to die on this part? Like, we'll do it. And, like, everyone got one of those. And but for the most part, we're pretty democratic with the way, like, it's like we'll all kind of vote on something, and, like, even if someone, like, disagrees, you just got to go with what we all agree with. And
yeah, and it never, like, even the most heated arguments or the longest stalemates. Again, it did take a long time to record this record. We're like over the smallest things, like things that you would go back and you wouldn't even notice. Like, so there is a lot of that, like, when you're really focusing in on something small, and it obviously means a lot to everyone. That did take up a lot of time, but I thought it was obviously very democratic, and we kind of, having 5 members makes that pretty good, because then you're never totally, there's a swing member all the time. and maybe you have to get the swing member a 10-piece from Wendy's, you know, a little bribery.
How are you thinking about this part?
Well, because to me, I think the other thing too, being a band as long as you have, it's like I think everyone probably knows how to work well with each other. Obviously, you know, being in confined spaces for as long as you guys have in touring, that I feel like probably your communication is probably really good. Because I don't think you can endure that touring conditions as long as you all have, and not at this point. But I do understand, like I said, working in a studio is totally different because everyone's kind of married to their ideas sometimes and really wants to fight for them. And sometimes, like you said, it's funny you said the hill you want to die on. Like, there's been times, even my wife and I, like, trying to do projects where I'm like, just go away, let me do this thing. I'm gonna yell at it a bunch, but you being here is like gonna make it way worse. And I know that, so just before I yell at you, because I'm mad at these stupid IKEA directions that don't make any fucking sense, I'm just gonna have you go away, and I'll just be mad and upset by myself, and then it'll be done. But I think there just becomes that learning part of yourself and your creative process and how you work through things. And sometimes, like I said, I find that dynamic really interesting because I think it's not something we usually see. Like, we see the end result, but not how it was made. So do you feel that your relationships have strengthened as a result of this process?
I'd say so. When we started this band, we all lived in a house together, like the whole band did.
Who's the dirtiest?
Probably me. But like we lived in a house together for like 2 years before we even went on the road. So like we're at this point, like, we've been a band for close to a decade. About, I think, and like we're basically a family now. So like we know how to, like you said, we know how to push each other's buttons, and but at the same time we also know like we know when to trust other people with their ideas, and that can be huge when you're in a band, because you know, you're creating art, and sometimes disagreements can be a disagreement, but at least it's like, well, even though I disagree with this, I still trust like what you're saying, and I believe you could be right. So
yeah, even the arguments that you lose, it's still like, not that the part's bad, you know what I mean? It's just like, and the way that you're trying to marginally improve it is probably diminishing returns anyway. Like, you're arguing about something so small, but yeah, I feel like we're pretty close, and we kind of understand each other in a deeper way. And so yeah, we kind of know how to get around all the little creative disagreements.
It's funny, something I was telling my wife and some friends a while ago, we were talking about projects, and something that we're kind of talking about was how some people will offer an opinion or whatever, and you want to be nice, but like, you know that that's not going to work, or like maybe it isn't, and you have to try to convince them like, this way's better. And so we were kind of talking about how we all do that internally. Like, how do we make someone try to side with us? Apparently with you, it's getting a 10-piece nugget at Wendy's, maybe, to get you to do that. But it was something I kind of started thinking about, was sort of the idea of things being better. Like, we just always quantify something as, well, this is going to be better. But how much better? Because, like, you know, I was like, what if it's like toilet paper math, that your math is better, or your way is better? Like, well, my way is 30% better than yours. But if I really break that down, like, what is that 30%? It's like 2 more pieces of toilet paper. Is that really that much of a difference? Does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? No, but my 30% sounds better, and there's sort of an ego thing to it. So it's like, if I offer an opinion and I realize it's going to make someone work better with me, then I probably will. And I realize that like the difference really in the grand scheme of things is like just this little bit. I'm probably just going to let it go, because it's not really worth. It's not the hill I want to die on, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, exactly. You got to save the hill you want to die on for something really important.
Did you all use yours?
I did. Yeah,
I used mine. Yeah,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I
remember vividly what mine was.
What was yours?
Because the song's out. And Heart to Heart.
Okay.
The first verse.
Oh
Originally,
my
when we
God.
demoed that out, Anthony sang it with a very soft voice and was like,
Octave low,
it
yeah.
was an octave lower and it was very soft. And I was like, no, this needs to be like belting. It needs to be high energy. And it took like 2 weeks until I was like, this is my hill. I'm dying on it. We need to change this.
And he was right.
And and it was significantly better. Like if you hear the old version, you're like, why would they do this? But see, but in that case, that wasn't a small thing. That was a very large.
That was a big one. Yeah.
So sometimes those hills to die on can be important.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like that was something else, and this is probably as great a segue as I'll ever get to there, but something that's interesting to me about when you start going through the demoing process and even the mixing and mastering process of a record is little things can just drastically change how a song actually goes. Like if you have an acoustic guitar and depending on how you mix it, it can sound like happy and poppy or it can sound not, and it can totally drastically change the vibe of the song just on that one little, thing you're changing. I feel like this record could be really interesting to go back and either like provide demos where you can kind of A and B the original idea to what ended up being. Or I could even see this being a thing where maybe down the road you can kind of like reinterpret some of this stuff where it's like, all right, we went balls crazy on this song. Now it's an acoustic track. Now you're going to hear like how we stripped it down, or like it's a piano and it's very sparse, the arrangement versus being very full on, like something like that. Like, cause I feel like I said, there's so many ways when I hear a record like this where it just goes, this record's really cool as it is, but I feel like this isn't maybe how the song started. That there's different iterations it took to get here. What were those? How did it get here? Let me see that from and just kind of watch the progression of this record becoming what it is. Again, with Mosaic being the album title, I feel like there's so many pieces that like maybe like the negative space makes to make this record what it is.
Yeah, there's there are several songs that are, if you, what can I say was totally different than what it is. It was like totally different, like tempo. It was like a Frank Turner song or something.
Well, it still kind of is.
Okay.
But
yeah,
it was more like a My Chem song. I feel like because there was a crazy guitar solo in it. It was like acoustic, but it was like fast verses. It was
no, it was just acoustic in the beginning. Then it was all electric.
Yeah,
and it was like all
way different track.
Very different. Out. Yeah, so there's a lot of that kind of like, taking something and then flipping it around and seeing what happens.
What are with a record like this, and obviously having to pick the singles and so forth, what are you most excited for people to hear now that it's close to coming out as a full?
When the full record comes out, the Mosaic, the title track, the last one, the long song, that's like my favorite song we've ever written. I'm excited for people to hear that because on top of that, like the lyrics and the melody callbacks that are from the whole record, like everything makes an appearance in that song. But I feel like it's not forced. Like the way that we wrote that was pretty organic. So definitely that song I think is, and it's gonna be one of those things where people love it or they hate it because it's like, who's gonna listen to a 10-minute long song? Like,
yeah,
well, I would. So.
I would, yeah, and I feel like the people that do listen to them will appreciate it. At least appreciate it. I mean, I love that kind of shit, so like that is definitely the one I'm looking forward to as well. But who knows? The good thing is that people that will think it's whack won't even listen to it. So like they'll get like 3 minutes in and be like, "What the fuck is this? Get out of here!" So the people that will listen to the whole thing will be rewarded, I hope. So yeah.
I always think it's funny. The first thing you said, I mean, I don't know who's going to listen to this and be like, you guys, because we're playing it right now.
Yeah,
all
right.
10 minutes. Get out your lighters.
Yeah, right.
This is our Pink Floyd moment.
There we go. Yeah. Make a cup of coffee or have a beer.
Yeah.
Sit down. You got 10 minutes.
Do you feel like...
I was going to say, it's really fun. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's a delay. But it's really funny too when we were like writing that and like I'd have to like I'd listen to the demo in the car and I'd be like, how far is this place? 15 minutes. Okay, I can listen to this song at like once and a half. Like,
Yeah.
It is funny how you start measuring time or things in other increments of measurement other than what it actually is.
yeah.
Like, oh, I got like that's 1.5 mosaics. So yeah,
Totally.
that's how you're going to start referring to your set list now. Okay, on this tour we get about 4 mosaics worth of a set.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a short one. We're only going to play the Mosaic twice.
Yeah.
It's still a 20-minute long set. So
We're actually going to play it back to back, just in case you didn't like it the first time.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances, so you might want to pay attention on the third go around.
I mean, it reminds me of like when I went and saw System of a Down, like whatever that record. I think it was Mesmerize or Hypnotize, one of those two. And they were filming the video for the title track of either album. And they did it like the second song in. And then they did it. I know they at least played it twice, but I swear they played it 3 times so they can get footage for the live video. And I was like, this song sucks, and I didn't really like it the first time. I really don't like it the second time. And then the fact that you're playing it a third time is even worse. Like, I could have heard some other song at least once at this point that I would have rather have heard.
That's pretty insane, even if you're filming a video.
yeah.
To like go, I mean, you're playing a whole tour. You got it. You don't need 3 a night, right?
You're playing a show. Like,
I think we were the only show they did it at, I think was the thing. We were the only show that they could get the video crew for.
Oh, shit.
So I think it was like a kind of one and done, I think.
Okay. That makes more sense, yeah.
Yeah, but it was still very weird. Like, it's like, that's a very self-indulgent thing you're making us do.
Yeah.
Shit, I just kind of lost an idea of a question. How long did the album name, like, did you have the name for the album right away?
No, not right away. No, it didn't come to us until like I remember when it happened. We were over at Joe's, and it was like it kind of like came. It was like that's the one, a eureka moment. Just because like how all the songs kind of go together, what the lyrical meaning of all the songs, how they're all kind of different, but they all kind of point to the same thing. Yeah, it just like perfectly embodies what the piece of work is. So it came, and yeah, obviously, like we're like, it's got to be called Mosaic. And at the time, I had an artist that I was like, we have to use this artist. She's so good. And we hit her up, and she was super stoked about it. So it like, and yeah, we're like, obviously, we have to do a mosaic of a girl's face. It's just, yeah, it really worked out so well. And but yeah, like total moment of eureka. It was not planned.
It was like towards the end of the record. We also worked on this record for like writing and recording. It was probably about 1.5 years, maybe even closer to 2.
Yeah, no.
And with the title came like towards the end. So.
Yeah.
Are you someone who is amazed at how, or both of you, that how maybe those moments happen in your lives pretty consistently? Those, like, you don't have something and then just magically something comes to you and you're like, holy shit, this is the right word, it's the right whatever. Does that happen in your lives a lot? Like, do you lean into those things?
It doesn't happen enough.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. You're working too hard. Come on. I need more eurekas.
Yeah. But there have been a few times where I feel like I knew it was going to do well, or when I had an idea and I thought it was going to work. It was, I mean, the first one, like we released an old song called Wax Poetic, and it's done really well for us. And I think when we were tracking that, I knew it. I was like, yeah, this is going to do pretty well. But every other time I've had that thought, I've been completely wrong. So I have no idea.
I just think it's interesting to see how sometimes, especially as you get older, like you'll lean into things. I don't necessarily want to call them premonitions or anything like that, but I mean, there have been times, like for an example, there's a bar I used to work at, and I was leaving because I had to work like a Saturday night bar shift at the door. And I was telling my wife, I was like, something weird's going to happen tonight. And I go, it's not going to happen like in the beginning or toward like the middle. It's gonna be like literally right at the end of the night, and it's gonna be something weird that like never happens. Like that we can't even like I won't be able to read body language and be like, oh, this fight's about to happen or anything. Like, it's gonna be something that I just don't deal with. And sure as shit, that night we were literally like closing early, like which never happens on a Saturday. Everything was great. Everyone made good money. Everyone's in good spirits. We're about to leave. Someone literally kicks in our one of the windows in our door, and I was like, oh, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And then like my wife was just like, "You called it," and I was like, "I fucking did." And I go, "I'm going to start vocalizing these things because it's." I realize these kind of weird things happen, or I'll think about them, and then when they happen, I go, "Did I manifest this thing, or like was it just meant to happen?" And so like I don't really talk about that necessarily on the show, but I always do think it's kind of interesting when things just kind of either do happen and plan out the way that you maybe had a premonition or just an inkling it would. Like, do you lean into those things a little bit more? Do you tend to like vocalize them into existence? Maybe.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't say like I don't know. I doubt everything. If I have a feeling about something, I'm like, I feel really weird about that, but I'm a skeptic, so I'm just like, fuck that. I don't know, So I don't know.
Even with your own, even if it applies to yourself.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I'm like, yeah.
Fair enough.
I'll feel like I'm like on to something, but I mean, if you look at my betting history, it's not good.
Oh,
like,
but when you hit, doesn't it hit like real good?
It feels good when you hit, yeah.
Because I was gonna say a friend. Yeah, I had a friend that was like, because he's really dialed in on basketball. Like I watch it a lot, but I don't place bets on it all that often. Football's more my thing. And I remember he was like, "Oh, I want to place this wager. Like if you sign up for this thing, we each get like a bonus, whatever bet or free amount of money." So he was like, "Well, you got a free $100," and I was like, "Put a parlay together." And I go, "Spend it all. I don't give a shit. It's free money." And it fucking hit, but it had to go into overtime. It was I needed Jason Tatum grabbing one more rebound. And they got it, and I won like $900.
Damn, let's go.
But the amount of like $4 or $5 bets I'll put on the NFL where it's like 11 legs of a parlay, and I miss it by like, actually I missed one that would have hit for like 20 grand by a combined 32 yards, and I had all of the legs by halftime, other than the two that I missed.
Oh,
Damn.
Like I missed it. I missed it at the at halftime. So I was like. And I was at the game with a bunch of friends. I was like, I'm going to fucking hit this parlay for fucking like 20 grand on a $16 bet. This shit is going to be insane. And then they were like, your face as the game just kept going on. And I was like, yeah, it wasn't great. I was mad.
Yeah. Damn.
So you, St. Andrews, that's Michigan, right?
Yeah, you're Detroit. Are you a Lions
Yeah.
fan? Hell yeah.
I like the Lions just because I live here. I'm actually in Grand Rapids. So.
Oh, okay.
So Intersection would be the venue you guys are probably used to.
Nice, yeah. I grew up going to that venue.
Okay.
Yeah, a bunch of us. Well, I'm from Michiana. I'm from South Bend, but Scott, Anthony, and Boz are all from Michigan.
Detroit, yeah.
Yeah, I think Boz knows Brandon from Lake Effect.
Oh yeah.
for sure.
Howcroft. Yeah.
Yep.
He was actually trying to get him to do the show. Actually, I think he was sort of punishing him on my behalf to do the show back on that Being as an Ocean tour, and I was like, it's fine, man. Then we all went to the bar around the corner from the venue, and then he was like kind of introducing me to all of you guys, and he's like, he's got a podcast. I was like, they don't give a fuck, man. They're just ready to drink and hang out. I was like, we don't need to punish people.
That bar is
that bar is rad.
Really cool.
Yeah, that's like the hidden gem when we go travel. We're like, we're just gonna Checkers if you're over by. Actually, I think it's kind of the same venue, just on the opposite side. Like you go a different way, and there's another like bar that stays open late and has decent food and strong drinks.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
love that area.
The wings at that one place.
Oh yeah, the wings across the street. That place is awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
I feel like that's like a weird Michigan thing where it's like, I'm going to this bar for food, but it's because the food's actually good. It just happens to be a bar. Like,
Yeah.
it sounds like I'm an alcoholic half the time talking like, I went here. And they're like, isn't that a bar? And I'm like, yeah, but they have food.
And yes, I did have a beer, but I went for the food.
What, I guess like kind of slowly start wrapping this up because speaking of food, I got to cook dinner for my wife and I in a little bit. 10 years of being a band. Like, what are does it feel like it has been that long, or does it feel like you're just now like still in it and it's only like a year in and you're still fresh and young kids doing it?
I feel like it still feels pretty young. Like we'll think about, or you'll get like notifications about like, oh, you released this like 8 years ago, and it's like, damn, I feel like I just put that out. Like,
it feels like it does feel new still, or like it feels exciting, and then like you think back and you're like, oh shit, that tour was 6 years ago. Like what? It doesn't feel, everything feel like Warped Tour was 6 years ago.
That's insane.
Like dude. It's crazy. It blows my mind. It does not feel like that.
The last one?
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Fuck.
2018.
I also talk about how everyone's got like Swiss cheese brain from losing 2 years during the pandemic. So
pretty much,
partially, yeah.
It set everything up really weird though, because now it's like, oh, there are like 2 years that didn't exist. We don't do a time jump.
Yeah,
they don't count.
Well, I mean, I can't tell you how. I mean, you just literally saw it happen or heard it happen. Where in my head I was like, no, that was like 4 years ago, and then I'm like, no, because 2 years we didn't have. So we're 2 years on one side, and it was 2 years on the other side of that. So yeah, no, that math works, but it doesn't feel like it. It's like we all, like I said, like just collectively had a blackout. Like woke up one day and it was like, oh, all right, it's over. And now we're back to normal. And you're like, what happened at 2 years? We don't talk about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Has this happened to you guys yet? And how have you reacted to it, where being a band as long as you have been, or maybe you've influenced somebody to start being in a band that's maybe played with you?
I don't think that's.
I don't think it's happened yet. I don't think. Not that I've heard anyway. So yeah.
So as I say, 10-year mark is where, especially given how fast some of the like kids are so lucky nowadays that you can go to any show. Like growing up, it's like, oh, this tour is coming through, but it's sponsored by Budweiser, so if you're not 21, you can't go. Or it's sponsored by da-da-da, so like you have to be 18 and up to go. And it's like kids now can pretty much go to any show of any tour, and there's no limitations. So it's like kids don't know how good they have it. But I often think about how good.
They still sometimes, like, we hate it when it happens, but there's like shows that are 21 plus. Like
Really?
forget that they exist. Yeah. We've played a couple.
Yeah,
not even that long ago.
Or because like if the venue sells alcohol, then they're like, no, it's 21 and up. Or they'll do like some weird stuff. We've seen some strange things. Like
Oregon's got it weird where they put the barricade in between, so the young kids got to go and you got to pass. That fucked me up when I went out to Portland. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, they do that there, and it's really strange. But
there are a couple other places too that do that. But yeah, I always hate those split rooms, man. They suck.
Yeah, they're very weird. The only nice thing about it as an older person is I'm like, cool, kids aren't near me.
Yeah.
So like all the adults are just kind of like hanging back. You're like, all right, this isn't so bad. And usually the soundboard's back that way too, so it's kind of like where the best sound is going to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
That's true.
I'm not trying to lose more of my hearing.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. That's interesting though, because I would have felt like you guys being around, especially in the scene when you guys got into it and with the bands that you've toured with, I feel like you probably would have heard at some point like, oh, I saw you guys on this tour, like opening First to Four or whatever, and I fell in love with you guys and it made me want to be a singer or a guitar player or something. So I feel like that would have happened at some point to you guys.
We haven't been touring for 10 years. Like we really our like real main, like our real touring, like where we were touring consistently was 2018. So like we started touring in like 2016, but not enough to be like, oh, we're touring, So like it's still a little young for. I know that those.
No, I'm thinking of the shitty thing of like, yeah, but we're keeping our like little like the collection of tour laminates when you just like toured your state.
Oh yeah.
You just wore those out, like where you're like, yeah, no, I'm on tour, and you're like, with who? No, it's just us. And I made these. We did 3 dates on a weekend.
Occasionally, I see people doing that, and it still blows my fucking mind.
I mean, I still have the one I did somewhere as like a keepsake for myself, but I don't keep it on my like keychain.
Oh yeah, you got to keep all your laminates. You got to do that,
yeah.
But you don't wear them.
Yeah.
That's
once
against
the tour's
the
over, you got to take that thing
against
off.
the rules. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say like It's funny, like I'll move my computer, but like that's what I've done with all my stickies. Is I just put them on my beer fridge.
Nice.
And I always hate when people make me have to wear them too, because I'm like, they don't stick on my fridge as good anymore.
Yeah.
But what man, I've just been really blanking today. With this album coming out, you know, it's what are we? April. We're about 2 months technically from it coming out. What are some fun merch ideas maybe you have surrounding this? Because I feel like the album cover itself really lends itself to doing some interesting merch ideas, like a puzzle, or actually like more like interesting street team type stuff where it's like, oh, put this like on a brick wall or something and promote the record.
Yeah, we have like a couple ideas, but nothing like, we don't have a ton of like slam dunk like, oh, this is totally like, we've kicked around the idea of like a puzzle and or like, you know, stencils, like spray paint stencils. But again, yeah, it's like we're so busy, like we're still making content for this record, so like we're still like making music videos, and so it's like I need a break. You know, like I've been focusing on this record for over 2 years. Like, yeah,
That's I mean, that's a reoccurring topic on this show, and I sort of alluded to it earlier, where it's like by the time you guys are starting to do press junket stuff, potentially you've been sitting on this record in some form of a final version for at least a year. You've probably been sitting with the material for however long before that. And then it always brings me into kind of headier stuff like, you know, doing different psychedelics and stuff. I always get fascinated with the idea of time and how we exist in these different planes. But it's like, as creatives, you don't really get to exist in any one, but you exist in all three at the same time, which is your past, present, and future. So right now, you're recollecting things that were in your past. Things that are happening to you in your present are going to inform the next bit of material you'll make in the future. But you're traversing and having to exist in all three of these kind of simultaneously. And that's a very weird thing to kind of understand and realize as a person, where you're like, I'm not any one thing and I don't exist in any one space, but I exist in all of them and none of them.
right, yeah. Yeah, it's certainly ready to get it out, and then like then everyone can know the music like I know it. So yeah.
Do you how outside of having to listen for like mixing and mastering and all that stuff, is this still a record that you are listening to?
No.
Sometimes if we're on tour and we're drunk, we'll put it on.
Oh yeah, band. True. Yeah, if we're like we just had a killer show and we're all like feeling pretty good from all the drinks, we're throwing it on in the band.
And because then it's just like fun, because we're like, we'll talk and be like, you remember you wanted to change that, we didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll listen to it. It's really strange though, because I feel like, I mean, I don't know if other bands do this, but like with us, like once the record's out, I barely go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Like same. I haven't listened to like Restless Heart in forever.
Yeah.
But it's not because we don't like it anymore. It's constantly moving on to the next thing. Like it's tough.
I always think that part is an interesting part of, I think, not even just being a creative and like in a musician standpoint, but just a life perspective, where I think a lot of times we're bad at taking inventory of where we are and where we've been, while still, because we're just so used to being head down, you know, on the grind, just moving forward, that it's like not allowing yourself to even just kind of stop for a second and just admire everything that the journey has taken you on, I think is kind of a disservice a lot of times. So I always find it interesting, especially when you're putting out a record, that it's like, are you still jamming it? Are you still excited about it, even after all this time and all the process it took, and probably the different ways you've had to listen to it as, okay, I'm listening to it for a mix, I'm listening to it for a vocal melody idea, or for a, you know, a melody in general. Like, you're listening to this album so many different ways. Are you still able to enjoy it, or is it like completely like, I'm fucking ready for this thing to be done and it to be in everyone else's hands and start the next thing down the road?
It'll be cool to revisit it, but again, yeah, like we did beat
at this time. I'm ready for something new.
Same.
But it is a weird thought that like you spend so much time and so much effort on this, and then once it's out, it's like, okay, next thing.
Yeah.
Like, especially like nowadays, there's so much there's so much that you have to constantly be doing as a band. Like we took a year to write this record, and now that it's out, it's like, okay, well now you got to do video content. You like there's just always so much to do. Yeah, and it's like once this is out, we'll probably just start on the next record. It's funny.
I had this sort of weird epiphany the other day because I have another podcast I do with two of my close friends where they come here and do it. And so we did it in seasonal format because I was like, after doing this show and it's a weekly based show, I was like, I'm never doing something on a weekly schedule because just lives are too hard to pin down, especially when you start adding more people. It just gets really frustrating to try to do that. And I was like, I'm not going to. But when we started doing the first season, like, we didn't have a logo, we didn't really have a theme song. So I was like, all right, heading into season 2, these are things we got to lock down. We have those, but now I'm like, oh, I probably got to start creating clips and all this kind of stuff. So like I've been kind of going through everything retroactively when we're done and pulling them out now. Excuse me. So that when we actually have the break in between seasons, I actually get a break this time. Unlike last time where I was the one posting everything and trying to drum up, engagement and all that. I was like, this shit sucks. It's like never ending. And even though this is only a very limited time, the fact that now I have to spend so much more time after it's done promoting the thing, I thought it would be easier because it's like, oh, I get to fuck off now for 2-3 months, and it's like, no, this is where the work actually starts. And I'm like, this sucks. And it kind of falls on me because I'm the one that knows how to kind of do all of this stuff at this point, but I hate doing it. And so I'm just kind of in this weird conundrum where I'm like, it'd be really great, I think, this next season for everyone to kind of pick like one social medium, like this one's yours to run, this one's yours to run, and here's mine. And we just kind of run it however we see fit and do that, because then at that point I don't feel as like it's me and I'm burnt out from doing it because I do this already with this thing. But it is interesting how I've kind of correlated that to probably the world that you guys are in, where you're like, man, the work's done. Now we get to have the fun part. And it's like, no. The work's just kind of now starting because, like, now you got to ramp up the machine of while you've been down and get everyone's eyes and ears on this thing as much as possible, which is, doing Instagram lives, doing things like this and all these other things. You're like, oh, I just want to sit back and enjoy doing nothing now.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of thing is fun. It's the unrelenting social media machine of a firm short form content posting schedule and all that fucking shit. That part sucks.
Do you guys divvy it up, or do you at least, I would assume the label probably has someone that can help you with all that kind of stuff at this point?
No, not really. We have to we have our workflow is pretty our social media posting is done by one person. But he doesn't have to worry about so much like all of the like ideas for making videos and all that. So like we kind of it is delegated, but not in the same way, if that makes sense. Not like one person has one social platform. Just one person hits post on everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in light of God, what was it? The dude from Bad Omens just deleting all his shit recently.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to do that.
I get it. It's a fucking nightmare. It sucks.
Is it hard to feel like maybe you all have to let people in maybe more than you would want them to?
It's not even like the like showing people who we are. It's more of just like you
can't stop once you start. You have to keep posting, otherwise it'll drop your algorithm will drop you. And
it's it's soul crushing, and it wants everything,
It's like we signed up to be musicians, not
exactly
social media entertainers.
Yeah.
But it is the world we live in.
That's
now.
it. Yeah.
Has the algorithm ever made someone not appear in your stuff and made it see, or maybe caused a nothing fight where someone thought you thought the other person didn't like you anymore because you just stopped seeing their stuff in your feed?
No, that has not happened. No.
Well, fair. You know what? You guys are lucky. That happened to me once, and I was just really? I texted someone and I was like, I thought you were mad at me because of something I posted because I haven't seen your shit in like 2 months. And then they're like, I just thought the other day I haven't seen any of your stuff, and I thought maybe you were mad at me. And I was like, no. But it's just because we weren't engaging with each other's things because we weren't posting much. The algorithm was just like, nah, well, you guys don't need to see each other anymore. And it was just like, huh. But it was interesting that because of our age and how old we were that we were at least able to like text each other and be like, hey, is everything all right? And you're like, yeah, everything's fine. But it was just kind of weird that like the epiphany of like, oh, social media decided that I didn't want to see their shit and vice versa. So they just made that decision for us. And it's like, that sucks.
Yeah. I agree.
Let you guys go. Last question for you. What would you like to promote online or anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I mean, just that we have the new record, The Mosaic, coming out May 24th on Fearless Records.
We have a tour coming up. We're going to be hitting the road with our friends Can't Swim in Belmont, and we are playing the Intersection, so or at least a room there, one of the rooms there. But
Probably,
we'll be hitting the road. I think so, yeah. And we'll be out May and June, so come see us.
I'll have to rip a hang either at the venue or take you guys next door to Tin Can.
Hell yeah,
That'd be
sounds
sick,
great.
yeah.
I'm sure you've been there.
I don't think so, because the last time I was there, like at the Intersection, I was in high school, so I had to drink all my beer in the car.
I used to do that in the band that I was in, and famously, I had some kid it felt like a heavy metal parking lot. I was just sitting in the parking lot drinking, and then this kid was like, "You just drinking by yourself in your van?" I was like, "Yup." He's like, "What a fucking!" It was just like, "What a fucking loser!" And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Well, this beer is like $8 in there, or I could buy a 30 rack and just drink them in here."
Hell
And it
yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
The cost is like whatever. And then he's just like, yeah, man, straight edge is the way to be. And I was like, what are you, like fucking 12? You don't even get a choice in the matter. Like, of course you're straight edge. Like, when you're 21 and you can make the actual option of going in somewhere and buying booze, and you tell me that you then don't want to, like, sure, I'll believe that you actually want to be straight edge. The amount of people I know that were claimed straight edge as kids and now straight up are not straight edge and drink all the time, like, is very amusing to me. But I always think back to that kid just being like, you're a fucking loser. And I'm like, fuck you, kid. Get out of my personal drinking space. But it was good chatting with you guys. Looking forward to hopefully ripping a hang when you guys are in town. I'll go ahead and say I'll apologize to whoever has to drive that night, because this town I know is a lot of fun. So maybe make it the hill to die on that. You don't get to drive that day. Like,
Yeah,
I'm drinking and hanging out with people.
Hell yeah, now I know.
There you go. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and looking forward to everyone hearing the record. By the way, last question, because it just came to me. Was there ever any thought as to whether it should be Mosaic or The Mosaic?
Yes, there was, and we landed on The Mosaic because it's epic as fuck.
Okay. As I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, was there, like, I think it looks better as just Mosaic. No, The Mosaic sounds better. And it's like, if there was any like back and forth on that.
There was also Mosaics thrown around too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, we ended at The Mosaic because it's just the word "the" is epic as hell.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a weird throwaway question at the end that I was like, that's a weird question.
All good, yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.
Thanks, John.
Yeah,
Take it easy.
Yeah. So that was my conversation with Harrison and Scott of Capstan. I want to thank them once again for coming on the show and really talking about the record. You know, it was kind of interesting to remember at the time of doing this that the band really hadn't done any press for the record, hadn't really talked to anyone that had heard it outside of, I think, one or two singles at the time. So it's always kind of interesting sometimes doing some of these things. And then even myself kind of looking back, you know, a month or so after the fact of you know, doing these and kind of remembering where I was, what was going on. And it also kind of speaks to sort of this love-hate I have of getting new music way ahead of time. Like, I enjoy getting new music well before, you know, the release date of these records and so forth. But the problem is I sometimes forget to keep listening to these records because it's a little bit harder when you can't just go to iTunes or Spotify or whatever and just click on something and then, there's the record. When you have to like log into media links and all this kind of stuff and you can't play the record without your browser open, and if you don't have it open, it'll just stop after every song. So it kind of creates a very odd listening experience when you're taking in these records and so forth ahead of time. And I think the other thing that like gets a little interesting too is it's almost like a rediscovery at times, because maybe I'm on to the next record to listen to maybe talk to a guest about or something like that, and is a thing where by the time the record comes out, seeing the fans of the band or friends of mine posting about this, oh, how great this song is or whatever. And it almost gives you like a second bite at that, oh yeah, this was a really good record. I should go back and listen to it. So, I mean, it's kind of weird. I talk about all the time about living in these kind of dualities of life of like in the past, in the present, kind of being in neither, but in both at the same time. And I think a lot of it, too, oddly, this past few weeks now, my wife and I have been going back through and watching one of our comfort food shows in Sex and the City, and it's been so crazy, as I'm approaching 40 here in the next couple of months, thinking about how I used to watch this when it first was in first run, and a lot of times it really was just so I could get to Oz because they ran back to back. But then watching it with, a longtime girlfriend in my first like adult relationship, when I first started dating my now wife, and then, subsequently over the years of watching it with my wife, and just kind of seeing how certain memories pop up with these things, how I feel about when I first watched these episodes and the things it made me feel and think versus now being more closer in line. Actually, in some instances, I think one of the episodes we were watching, one of the girls was about to turn 35 or is 35. And I'm like, okay, so I've got 5 years on you now versus when this came out and you were maybe 10 years older than me or at a different point when I was 35. So it's very interesting to kind of be able to traverse a lot of these feelings and memories lately watching this show and just thinking about relationships and careers and all these kind of things. And it's been a very interesting few weeks of self-reflection. And like I said, just kind of being authentically you and also learning from those around you. And I think that's something that the Capstan guys really went out for with this record, is putting out something that I think is authentically them, but is also the culmination of all of their influences, all their experiences. I mean, even to me, the last track, like I had kind of said in the chat, like literally the Mosaic is like a 10-minute long like epic, and like it's just, I don't know if that's something that the band could have done or felt comfortable doing until now. I think it took all of their experiences, past and present, to kind of get them there. So I'm really interested to see how this record does, and I'm interested to see the feedback. It's slowly been coming in. I haven't really been looking out for it intentionally, but now with this episode, I probably will go through and kind of start perusing some social media posts and so forth, and hop on Reddit and all that, and just kind of see what people are saying, because I feel strongly in how I feel about this record, but it is interesting to see maybe what other people are pulling from it, maybe some lyrics maybe that are resonating with them that maybe I've overlooked or something. But I definitely think this is a record that most people should be checking out. Honestly, might be, I haven't done one of these in a long time, but this might be in my like albums of the year, like my top 10 maybe. I haven't put together a top 10 end of the year album of the year list because I just feel like I don't really pay that much attention to what came out when, and I still listen to old music. Today, for example, I was listening to the self-titled 18 Visions record that came out back in like 06, and then subsequently talking about show reviews or record reviews, went back to see how the record was taken, because I like it. I think it's a pretty good record. There's some really strong songs on it that I always come back to. Tonightless, Sweetest Memory, I think it's Dead and Bruised, I think is one of them. But like just so many great songs on that record, and to see it so largely panned when it came out was really interesting. So it's always fun to kind of go back through and see something that you enjoy and just see how others are taking it in. Let's start wrapping up this episode. If you'd like to keep up with Capstan, you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capstan Band. Their website, it's in the show notes. It's a little bit it's like a link tree type thing. But basically, if you go in the show notes, wherever you're listening to this, you'll see a link. It'll take you to the web store and all that kind of stuff, tour dates, everything going on with the band. So just do that if that's what you would like to do to keep up with everything. If you'd like to keep up with Scott, you can find him on Instagram at Scott Fisha, Fisha. If you'd like to keep up with Harrison, you can find him at Shag Daddy Millionaire on Instagram. I didn't see personal pages for them on Twitter. I tried Google searching them and didn't really find anything. So if they do have personal pages, I'm sorry, I could not find it. Sometimes maybe I don't know if I'm just Googling things incorrectly. But Instagram is usually where most people want you to follow them anyway, so just go there. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, simple enough, Brewspeak Pod on all your major social media platforms. Shoot me a DM, shoot me an email, brutallyspeaking@gmail.com. Keep the conversation going. It's been great. Like I said, the last month or so, it's been really great getting to talk to so many people, really vibing with the episode. So hopefully that continues with this one. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, whatever you can do on whatever platform you are taking this in on. Please do such. It would be greatly appreciated. Also, very, 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 very close to hitting 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is when you can monetize the channel. So if I can get, I think it's 38 people, roughly, then I will hit that milestone. So if you aren't following me on YouTube, please do. It'd be greatly appreciated. And I know the folks over at Rockabilly would greatly appreciate you going over to their website, rockabilly.com, checking out all of their merch that they have, constantly adding new things, constantly doing killer collaborations with some of the day's hottest bands, and just doing really fun, cool shit. There is some actually... I'm privy to some things that are on the horizon, and there's going to be some more cool stuff coming. So keep your eyes and ears peeled over there. Use our code BRUTALLY at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. I want to thank them once again for supporting the show. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will see you all next week with S.A. Jones of Kitty Pig of We Are Pigs. She's a record producer as well. Lots to get into with that one. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll talk to you all then.